Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wisdom of Friends podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. This is a podcast where you get to learn more about your friends and community, their wisdom, their trials and tribulations, timeless insights, and their secrets. Now, let's get into the show. Please welcome your host, Cal Arras.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of Wisdom of Friends. I'm your host, Cal Arras. And today I'm really excited to be introducing you to a dear friend of mine. His name is Larry DeAngelis. Now, Larry is a senior vice president and executive at Donner Advertising. Donner Advertising is an international firm that stands for Audacious Things for Ambitious Brands. Now, Larry has had extensive experience in branding and advertising and also helping healthcare companies, including Cleveland Clinic, University Hospitals of Cleveland, and many other specialty chemical companies like DuPont and Ashland. Larry also serves on the board of directors of McGregor in Cleveland, Ohio. And in this episode, we talk about the importance of branding and advertising and today's digital age. The importance of authenticity, the importance of consistency, and the confidence needed to communicate effectively the messaging of your brand. Larry also talks about the incredible work that Donner Advertising has been doing in creating provocative ads for the opioid awareness campaign. The effort here is part of a larger year-long campaign created to flip the narrative of anti-drug campaigns. This is really a fascinating conversation, friends. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. So pull up a chair and listen in. And without further ado, let's welcome the one and only Larry DeAngelis. So, good afternoon, Larry. Welcome to the Wisdom of Friends show. I'm really excited that you took some time to be on this program. And let me start off with my first impressions of you. And this was almost, I think it was like 10 years ago where we met for the first time. This was at the Toastmasters Club in Cleveland. It was the East Side Toastmasters where we were part of this incredible communications and leadership team. And I distinctly remember that I had given a speech out there, and you were one of my evaluators for that speech, and you had mentioned something that was incredible, and that stayed with me for a long time, and even I remember it now. You said, like, someday you're going to be like on those television infomercials talking about, your books and your selling CDs and, giving those kind of talks. And I was like, that's such a sweet thing to say that. I really thought that, what an encouragement that you provided as part of your feedback to me that, I could go on and do all these public speaking talks when I was just starting out. And I really thank you for that vote of confidence. And I know I've been following your profile for quite a bit now, and you've made some incredible progress in your career as well as your leadership and communication journey. So thank you for that, and welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Cal. And I got a little nervous. I was concerned of what I might have put in your evaluation, but I'm glad it was positive and turned out to be prophetic. But good to talk to you after a long time, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was all good. So thank you. So one of the ways, Larry, we kick off our shows is with a very simple but profound question for our guest, and that is, what is your favorite quote or philosophy that you live by, and how have you applied it to your life?
It's maybe it's not the most profound, I guess, but I'm going to have to say it's the keep it simple. In the world that we live in, things are getting more complicated all the time. Certainly in the business of marketing and communications, it's something new every day with digital technology, and it's easy to get caught up in the weeds and forget that what we're doing in advertising and marketing is the means by which we do it have changed, but it's really the same thing people have been doing since the industry started. And I guess the same goes for the home life too. Sorry, with 2 young children now, and it's easy to really get overwhelmed unless you just take a step back sometimes and say what's really important here today, or this week, or this month.
No, I like that. And I think what you're referring to is, with all the information overload that we as human beings experience today with the advent of social media and then fake news, as some of us call it, it's really important to know what are the priorities, and like keeping it simple. I totally dig that. I think that's really awesome. So I understand, Larry, that you are the senior vice president of one of the really well-known advertising agencies in the country, Donner Advertising. So, and you're one of the senior executives. And so my question to you is, and I believe you've been doing this for quite some time now. I remember you were working at Donner when I was in Cleveland as well. So it's been quite a journey for you. So my question to you is, how did this journey unfold for you? Did you always know that branding and advertising was your passion, or how did that come about for you?
Well, I wouldn't say always, but a lot earlier on than most people, and I consider myself lucky for that. Sometime in college, I was taking communications classes and a minor in psychology, and came across a consumer behavior course, and that was really the trigger. And it seemed like the perfect mix of communications and psychology. And before I graduated, I knew that I wanted to get into the advertising field.
No, that's great. And then I'm reviewing the website for Donner, and one of the things they highlight on the website is that the demand for audacity, which is consumers expect to interact with brands they love and not just be interrupted by them. And I think in today's experience economy, this is so important as part of great advertising. And so it seems like you did find your calling early on, and that really helped you navigate your career and make the right choices to be doing what you love to do. So what I'm curious about, Larry, is now, did you grow up in Ohio, or what was that childhood like for you? Describe your childhood, and what did your parents do, and how did that shape your life?
Well, I actually was born in Pittsburgh, lived there until I was just about 1 year old. Then my family moved to Detroit, and we were there until I was about 5, and then down to Orlando, Florida, till I was 7 years old, when unfortunately my father died unexpectedly, and it was his career in hotel management that kept us moving around. Now, if he had not passed so early, who knows how many places I would have lived in. But after he died, we came back to Cleveland, where not back for me, but back for my family, because that's where everybody was rooted. So I've been in Cleveland since I was 10 years old, and my mom was a housewife until my father died, and we moved back, and she went back to work, and I think from that point forward, I was kind of a latchkey kid, and I had 2 older sisters, not significantly older than me now, but 3, 4, 5 years when you're a little kid is a lot. So I spent a lot of time alone, I would say, and I think it probably fostered a bit of an imagination, and probably one that serves me well when trying to solve marketing and branding problems that often are solved with a lot of information, but a little imagination is what can turn it into some magic.
No, that is really great that you share that, and it must have been. I got to commend you for saying that, because oftentimes, the adversities that we face can really strengthen our character, and it helps us hone in our skill set that can be a gift that we can give back to the community and to the society. And it seems like growing up and really being on your own in a way kind of like helped you pick up skills like imagination, and that's really been one of the strengths of yours as you navigate the complex world of branding and advertising. And so the other question that it brings up is, we've had so many guests on the show, and one of the common themes or the through line that we've noticed, Larry, is that most of these people are incredibly successful at what they do, but oftentimes that they have encountered certain challenges that if you ask an average person, they would have said that it's devastating or it's a major failure or a setback. However, these individuals that I've interviewed, they have looked at these failures or setbacks not as a breakdown, but more of an opportunity or more of a stepping stone or a platform for even greater challenges and bigger successes. So my question to you is, what were one or two biggest challenges that you faced in your life, and how did you overcome it, and what lessons have you learned from them that has helped you navigate life going forward?
Well, the one that comes to mind is just sort of getting started in a field that I knew I wanted to be in. It's not a big field, and especially if you're not in New York or Chicago, LA, the big markets, Detroit somewhat because of the automotive business up there. So there's not a ton of jobs in it, and certainly that wasn't the case in Cleveland as well. It's sort of a kind of a secondary kind of industry. So, the good news was I knew what I wanted to do. The bad news was there's literally a handful of jobs as far as, getting your foot in the door. And I tried everything. I interned and I caddied for people that were terrible golfers, but I knew they worked at an ad agency. So I tried to get cozy with them. I did everything I could, and interviewed and really reached a point of frustration. I kind of blamed it on, I went to Cleveland State, I didn't go to a big name college, or whatever number of reasons. But I stuck with it, and I took a very humbling job selling direct mail advertising, going door to door, literally to dry cleaners and pizza shops and cabinet refacers and anything else, and walking in cold and trying to convince them to advertise, and not only convince them to advertise, but convince them to buy an ad in a fabulous publication called JB Dollar Stretcher Magazine. But I persevered. I did it for 6 months until something one of the doors I had been knocking on opened up in an ad agency, and it wasn't in account management as I wanted to get into, but it was in media planning and buying. And having taken this job that I didn't want in advertising sales really teed me up for that. So long way of saying just perseverance. I don't know if there's anything new there, but it's easy to give up. But if you keep pounding away, usually good things will happen.
No, I like that. I think that's such an important message, and it's like really the foundational trait to have. Regardless of what career or what domain or industry you're part of, that is really an important lesson for all of us here, because sometimes, we do have these big dreams, but the question then becomes, how do we even achieve that? And I think it's taking those small steps and not being afraid of taking on smaller jobs with a vision on the future. And I think that's exactly what you did as far as taking on, having the dignity of labor, if you will, and taking on these small jobs or ad hoc jobs to learn and caddy and really build your network as you went along. And then eventually you've gotten to a point of, becoming the senior VP of really a great company. And that's really awesome. And so my next question is, growing up in Cleveland and Pittsburgh and having, as you said, the latchkey kid, were there any mentors or people that you looked up to, or that you wanted to idolize, or you wanted to emulate, or any shout out that you want to give out to any mentors of yours? Who would that be?
Wow, I don't know if anybody's asked me that before, Cal, and I'm struggling to think of any until at least I got started in the business. And, growing up, I really was, I talk about imagination, but I think I was a bit of a loner, frankly. I had friends, of course, but I didn't have a father figure, even a surrogate, whether it be a relative or a friend of the family. But I would say if I do have a mentor in business, it'd have to be David Demuth, who's now the CEO of the company. When I started, he was just managing the local Cleveland office of Donor, and I think what he taught me was, you're as good as anybody else. It's easy in this business to let the reputation of your competition precede them. But his attitude was always, we were as good as anybody else. We're as smart as anybody else. Just have that confidence and that swagger, along with working really hard and really smart. But that really, working for him, and it's obviously served him well as he's risen to the top of the organization. But that really was a game changer for me to come into every new business situation or new client situation, not with overconfidence, but with the knowledge that if you've done your homework, you work hard, you really can compete with anybody.
No, that is indeed an incredible belief to have. And, oftentimes we say that, sometimes we may not have the belief in ourselves. And the key is to then surround yourself with people who instill that belief in you until you get your belief in that area. And I think it seems like those were the formative years of your life when his message and his mentoring, or that really helped you succeed in your life and your career. I mean, what a great thing to say is that there's nobody out there that's smarter than you or better than you, but you really you're as good as anybody else and working hard towards it. I mean, that's such an important lesson that we all need to learn, because oftentimes there are these self-doubts that creep in, not having gone to an Ivy League school, or not working for a Fortune 100 company, or whatever that might be that people may have. But the thing is, the self-belief can really be a game changer, and that has been proven true in your case and countless others. So that's so great. The confidence, Cal, right? And I wouldn't say that I don't have my moments where I question, but there's an old expression, it's not what you say, it's the way that you say it. And that's certainly true in a world that can be somewhat subjective like advertising. But it's why I found myself in Toastmasters. It was looking for that confidence to be as good a speaker as I possibly could be, because I had seen people that I didn't think were any smarter than I was. In fact, I thought I knew I was smarter than them, but they spoke with such confidence that people couldn't help but believe them. And that's something I was searching for as we were in Toastmasters together all those years ago. No, that is so great. I think I totally admire the fact that you mentioned that confidence. And then also what I'm hearing you say is, and you probably mentioned that, hard work, but I think the ability to keep continuously learning and growing and developing oneself, regardless of what status or what level we've achieved in our lives, I think that's where the juice of life is, if you will, to, if you're in the industry of relationships and building relationships, like with any business, or honing your skill set or professional skill set. I think that's so important. And talking about communications, I recently read your post where you mentioned that one of the presentations you had done at the Boy Scouts Club, who called you up to say that was one of your hallmark presentations that they really enjoyed it. So tell us about that. What was that presentation about? And the feedback that you got was really spectacular. So talk to us about that communication strategy workshop that you did.
Well, Cal, I think you saw a post where I was joking about our president and his speaking to the Boy Scouts.
Okay. All right.
That wasn't me.
Okay, got it. All right. So my question to you is now let's take a step down the memory lane there. So,
Sure.
growing up, like any hobbies and interests that you had developed as a young kid, are you still pursuing that? Or?
Well, I was always a runner, and since high school, and I think it was for me as much mental as physical. Mm-hmm. I ran one marathon, probably end up running maybe a dozen halves and countless 10Ks and 5Ks over the years. I had to give it up because it hurt my back. But that was a big passion of mine. And it was a time I would almost never run with headphones on. I would think I would have it was almost meditation or, a place where I came up with, a lot of thoughts, either personal or professional. I've replaced it with yoga, which is a good replacement. And the only other significant hobby I would say that's persevered is guitar, which it's a struggle for me, but a struggle that I've accepted and maintained because as much as I like the few times I actually have success, I think there's something about it where I know I'm not a natural, but I don't want to give it up because I just don't want to quit.
Oh, that's great. So what kind of yoga do you practice? Any hot yoga, or is that just vinyasa yoga, or what?
Yeah, mostly just vinyasa flow. I have done hot a little bit. The studio that I'm going to now doesn't really do hot, or if they do, I wouldn't consider it the true super hot where you're a puddle at the end. But I try and go in the morning before work. It's a good time, little me time, and a good workout, and I never regret going.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because I practice myself quite a bit, like at least 3 times a week, and I do more of a hot yoga, but it's always been very rejuvenating and reinvigorating after a good session. That's great. So now the other question I have for you is, having traveled to so many places as part of your business trips, and you said recently you were in Zurich, and so what are some of your favorite places to travel, and what about this place that you value so much?
I'd have to say my favorite destination so far has been Germany. It's been a while since I've been there, but I really enjoy. I was in southern Germany, Bavaria, and mostly in small towns. It's a beautiful place. The people seemed genuinely authentic and happy, and it's hard to put a finger on, Cal, but it just made me feel good to be there. I loved everything about it. Food, the beer, of course, and I think just that the expression of joy I saw in people in the beer halls with the music, and it was really just joy to be there.
Yeah, it is. I can resonate with what you're saying, because recently I made a trip to Spain, and it's amazing to kind of get exposed to different cultures and just a way of life and authenticity and just the hospitality of all these different places we go to. I mean, it was just incredible, and I can see what you're saying as far as the people and the welcoming feeling that you get when you visit. So, sounds like you had a good time.
Very good time. Yes, thanks.
Yeah, great. So next question is, now having been through these ebb and flow of life, Larry, and I've worked with so many businesses and things of that nature, at this point, I'm curious, what's your definition of success, and how would you define greatness as?
Well, for me, success is simply doing good work that improves the health of a client's brand and their business, being respected, being in a position, I should say, of mutual respect between client and agency, having a good team that's motivated, and just fulfillment on a daily basis. I think I'm at a point in my career where I've worked on a lot of different types of accounts and businesses, some that on the surface seem exciting and sexy, but the day-to-day existence can be miserable, and sometimes it's the more pedestrian things or seemingly more pedestrian that really are much more fulfilling. Greatness in our business is rare. It happens, but those are those campaigns and platforms that we develop for our clients that truly are revolutionary for them and put them in a position to succeed, either saving them from demise or keeping them on top. It doesn't really matter, but you know them when you see them, and they truly change, if not you personally, how the masses, or at least their audience, perceives them and changes their destiny.
Great. I really like that, your definition as to, success being creating a healthy environment of respect between the client and the agency, and greatness really enabling the brand or the client to have some kind of like a revolutionary imprint in the industry that they are part of. And sometimes it could take doing a lot of due diligence and really may not always be that appealing and sexy all the time, but it's really take doing the hard work and doing the homework, and I totally like that. And my next question to you is, what's your favorite failure? And what I mean by that is that failure turned into a major success down the road. And this could be an example out of your personal life or even a professional life, and to give you an example, I'll give you my personal story here that when I was in my undergrad school, I'd applied to come to the U.S. To complete my undergrad education, which is I'd done like my freshman and sophomore year back in India, and I'd been accepted in a university here in Michigan to do my junior and senior year. And all my friends were getting ready to leave India to greener pastures, if you will. And I was the one who did not get my visa. So I was left behind, and I was so heartbroken at that point. And I was seeing all my friends leave and, go on to do all these amazing universities. However, although it was devastating at that time, a couple of years later, I ended up applying for my master's program, and that's when I got my visa. And what did turn out was it was a blessing in disguise, because I did not have the kind of student loans that everybody else had. And then it turned out really well for me. And so sometimes when I look back, I think, oftentimes it may seem like a failure, but it turns out to be a blessing in disguise. So it turns out to be something that turns out into success down the road. So are there any examples in your own life or in your business career that you can share with our audience?
Well, nothing that dramatic. I would say learning that no matter how many times you've stood in front of a group of people and delivered a sales pitch or a presentation of any kind, that if you don't prepare, you will, if not fail, you will regret it, and certainly leave some things on the table. And one of my first, this is going back over 20 years, early opportunities to present to the agency's biggest client on a big stage. I was young and cocky and confident, and the client liked me, and I had done a lot of good things. And I winged it, and I choked. That ultimately drove me to Toastmasters. To this day, if I have a presentation, I'm practicing in the hotel room, to just get a little bit better. Because you can always be a little bit better if you rehearse one more time. If you study the research one more time, you'll retain something, you'll remember to say something, and hopefully have one less regret.
No, that's great. Really great. I think that's such an important point. And that's something that I've noticed with some of the professionals I've worked with in the past, even in my professional career, but as well as my social circle, where I see artists and musicians who are really world-class at what they do, but their emphasis on training and practice. And, I think there's an old beautiful saying. I think it's something like, the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in war, or something like that. I think it's the Spartan saying.
Right.
Huh?
I said that sounds right.
Yeah, exactly, and that's really something that I've taken on for my life as well, as it comes to public speaking and doing professional level presentations and things of that nature. So no, that's such an important point to remember. Moving on to our next section here, and these are some of the questions we have gotten from our audience. And before I jump into that, I know that there is a cause that you are really passionate about, that you've been, talking about it on social media, as well as taking a stand for in the community. And that relates to, the epidemic that we as a country, as a nation, have experienced in recent times. So why don't you tell us about that, and why is that a cause so important to you?
Yeah, so you're referring to opioid addiction, and, I can't say that it was anything I was personally impacted by, rather due to some work that we had done for another social welfare cause. We were approached by Cuyahoga County, which is the local county here that where Cleveland is, and many other suburbs. And one of the health systems here, Metro Health, had formed a task force to address the issue. But they had a little bit different take on it. There's been a lot of awareness about opioids by that name, and a lot of people are seeing the impact of people taking heroin laced with fentanyl and all these types of things on the news. But what hadn't been given much attention up till that point was that people were taking opioids every day. Way too many people were taking them. They just didn't know that name. They called it oxycodone or Percocet or something like that. And they were getting prescribed these drugs way too often by either their dentist or their orthopedist or some other type of physician. And an astonishing number of folks are getting addicted to them. Then their prescription runs out. They go to the black market to buy them. They buy them on the black market, or they steal them. One of the shocking things we learned was real estate open houses were a big place where people would go, pretend to be looking at the house, and just go through the medicine chest and see if they could find some opioids to steal. And somewhere down the road in this journey, somebody tells them, or they discover that heroin is the same thing, only it's cheaper and sometimes even easier to get. And that's where the switch goes to heroin, and that's where the overdoses happen, and that's what you see on TV. But there's this whole long line of things, from a high school athlete that blew out his knee to a middle-aged construction worker who has a bad back, to a stay-at-home mom that has surgery on her shoulder, whatever it might be. All these folks were getting prescribed opioids. And this is what was causing all these addictions. So they came to us with this cause, expressed to us what a big problem it was in the country, but also here in Ohio, which in 2016 had more overdose deaths from heroin, opioids, et cetera, than any other state. And Ohio is a fairly large state, but it's, I think, sixth in population, but had more deaths than any other state, and an absolute number. And Cuyahoga County had around 600 alone. So it's just a shockingly large problem that we certainly wanted to help if we could.
No, I think that's definitely an important aspect of society that we live in. And I think what you just highlighted here is oftentimes it starts off with the innocent initiation into this scary little phase where you get prescribed something for a back pain, and then you end up, getting addicted to it. And recently I interviewed one of the guests that we had on the show. And it started off similarly for him, and this was way back, and he's been, it was quite a journey for him to come out of that addiction as part of, like a rehab and things of that nature. But it was absolutely, as you said, it was started with a back pain, and somebody recommended him these drugs from the black market or whatever you want to call it, and then that ended up leading to addiction. So I think this is certainly a crisis that we as a society need to deal with. That's such an important thing that you've taken a stand for as a company as well as an individual. Now, the next question I have for you is, these are some of the questions we have gotten from our audience. And so the first question, Larry, for you is, what stops people from achieving their full potential, in your opinion?
Well, it's probably a lot of things. I think probably the main thing, though, is not pursuing their passion. I think if you are doing what you love to do, you just inherently work hard at it and persevere. I think a lot of people end up in a place where they have a job versus a career, and a job, you watch the clock and you punch in and you punch out, and a career, you don't have enough time in the day to get the work done.
No, absolutely. And it's something that it's important to find a calling. It doesn't matter how long it takes, but you got to kind of like dabble into different things and figure out what is it that resonates with you, what speaks to you, and then pursue that. And I think that can lead to contentment and job satisfaction. The next question I have for you is, I know, Larry, you've been married and for how many years now? It's been close to
9 years.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. And then you have two wonderful kids, a son and a daughter, correct?
That is correct, 6 and 4.
That's awesome. And so the question is, what advice would you give to someone entering the world of marriage and parenting?
Well, I guess this is interesting, and I don't know if it's advice or if it's just the truth or it's the right perspective to have. And for me as an older parent, it's been, this is, I think, something that I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound maybe like a negative thing, but for me, it's been one of the great positives of being, a parent and a husband is it's not about you anymore. It's, for me, it was kind of a bit of, in a strange way, a relief to know that, my life now was really to be the best parent, the best husband I could be, the best example I could be, and a provider. And, I didn't really care what anybody thought about me or who I was or anybody else other than, these two kids and my wife. That's really it.
No, I really, really like that. I think it's really having a goal for yourself, a personal goal to be the best father and the best husband, and continuously every day living up to that ideal. And I think that really is such a great message that I think we can all learn from. Now, the next question is, what is, I know you've been in the area of branding and advertising and marketing, but are there any specific books that you've read or reread over the years, or you've gifted it to people that you would like to share?
Yeah, I just started reading one, and I'm going to grab it because I forget the author, because I literally just started reading it, but it is quite good. It was somebody got it as a gift for me, actually. It's called The Attention Merchants by Tim Wu. And it really, I think, does a nice job of, historically talking about, I'll say advertising, but it's broader than that. And with the expansion of media and social platforms, the number of voices trying to get in your head on a daily basis is incredible, and really how your attention is a type of currency these days. You just think about, you had mentioned fake news earlier. I don't remember if it was before you started recording or not, but between advertising, the news, the fake news, social media, you name it. There is so much attention or so much competition for our attention, and why that competition exists. Truly fascinating.
No, that's great, and we'll include that as part of our show notes here. And this is a perfect segue to get into some of the business questions that we've gotten. And most of our listeners are, small business owners and entrepreneurs or artists who are starting their own business. So the question is, what would you say is a starting point, or what would be your advice for some of these entrepreneurs and the small businesses who cannot afford to hire top agencies like yours, for instance, to start looking at developing a brand or a personal brand? What's the starting point that you would suggest that they look at?
Well, I think it's, two things, I guess, if I had to give it a couple buzzwords, would be authenticity and consistency. I think there's, everybody can find something about their business or their brand that is truly them. I think, a good example of that is car dealers, right? I mean, these guys often have some of the worst quality advertising from one perspective that you could think of. But in every city, there's 2, 3, 4, 5 of these car dealers that just have, who they are. Their voice, they have a catchphrase, whatever it might be. And it's, usually ties back to their, personality in some way. And then stick with it. I think there's a lot of, it's easy to want to change things up all the time. But, when you keep hammering home with the same message over the period of years, it really does begin to stick. And I think the other thing about authenticity is I think there's a lot, somewhere along the line in business school, we're told to find the USP or the unique selling proposition. Look, every company, brand, business doesn't always have something completely unique. It's harder and harder to find something truly different about your offering. But you can find a truth about it that maybe, and sometimes it's a truth that you just hadn't thought of yourself, and someone else can help you find it, that can help people remember who you are, what place you might serve. A good one that's topical is Arby's, right? I mean, that was a brand that when we were kids, they had the big cowboy hat, and that's where you went and got roast beef sandwiches. But a couple of years ago, nobody knew what the heck they were anymore. They had roast beef sandwiches, but they had chicken and salads, and it seemed like every day it was something different. They hired a very famous agency called Fallon, who came up with this idea of basically you're America's deli, right? And this line of we have the meats, right? And the first time you heard that, you said, what the heck? But boy, it's turned their business around completely.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And I think you just highlighted, I think, the two most important aspects of any good brand. It's authenticity and consistency of messaging. And the next question, and if you look at, as you said, if you look at some of these iconic brands, I mean, we have today in our business world, like Apple or Disney, I mean, instantly there is a loyalty and a value that gets associated with that brand. And so my next question to you is, what's your take on personal branding? And what I mean by that is there are so many solopreneurs or speakers or individuals that are trying to branch out with their own, they're trying to carve out their own individual segment in the industry, in the marketplace. Do you think the same consistency and authenticity message would transfer over to developing a personal brand?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know why it would be any different. I think the ones that we, the famous ones that we know, whether it be Zig Ziglar or who's the Awaken the Power Within gentleman, I can't.
Tony Robbins and
Tony Robbins. I mean, there's a guy that's he's a character. He's got the energy. He's got the look. He's talking about personal power and all these kinds of things. The power sort of, becomes his go-to go-to line. I think it's exactly the same thing. And a good personal story like he has, I think is, because he embodies the power of what he's telling you, right? Because if you believe his backstory, he was a complete mess, right? Until he had the realization that, positive thinking could reprogram everything that he did, and it transformed his life. So he's got the authenticity and he's got the consistency of, he really hasn't changed his tone much in the 20 or 30 years I've been seeing him on at 2 a.m. selling his books.
No, that's so great. And I think, and there are other examples like Ellen and Oprah, and, they have been consistent with developing their brand. And so that's, having a good story to tell and then having the consistency of that message. I think that makes such a big difference. I know I'm looking at the Donner Advertising client list. I mean, you've had some amazing clients here, all the way from Fiat and Jeep to Nescafe and Cox, and it's an amazing list of clienteles. So the question is, and without giving away any of your IP secrets here, but what's typically your strategic creative process when a company comes to you, says, okay, we want to look at doing some advertising campaign, or we want to kind of like take our brand to the next level? What's typically the high level strategic process that you normally follow?
Well, look, it's had different names over the years, and every agency has a process. And the reality is everybody's process is virtually the same. You start with intelligence, and it's the most important part. Really getting a hold of the brand, where it stands in the marketplace, where it stands in the hearts and the minds of its potential customers, where its competition starts, and where the opportunities are, and most importantly, where the truths of the brand intersect with the desires of the consumer or the target audience for them, and then finding a message that speaks to that intersection, and because then at that point it's true. And it'll resonate in some way, and then once you have the strategy down, then the magic really happens in the creative process. But if we, as strategists, if we do our job right, we will hand the creative team something rich enough that a good creative thought will come through that is memorable, but is also telling people something that matters to them. Because you can have a funny commercial, and we've all been there, where I saw this funny commercial. Who was it for? I don't remember, right? Because there was a link missing in that communications that didn't connect with people, probably because they didn't have anything to say. So they ended up with a really funny commercial that people think was funny, but won't remember anything else about it.
No, it's such a good point, and I think it's really. Doing the homework, as you said, is to like really understanding what the brand identity stands for. And because strong brands, as we all know, can create great customer loyalty, and, it increases the focus for marketing efforts, and also supporting with our trade partners and vendors and all that important things that we take for granted when it comes to good branding. So, moving on to another question for you, and this is a hypothetical question, Larry. And let's say we had a time machine, and if you could go back in time and talk to your young self, or 20-year-old self, what advice would you give him?
Well, I think I'd go back to the conversation we were having earlier and give myself that confidence pep talk that I didn't get till I was nearly 30 years old, and not that it was in the form of a single pep talk, but that realization, I think I had a lot of doubt about what I could do, who I could compete with, was I good enough, all of these negative sort of mantras that are easy to adopt, And I kind of consider myself a late bloomer in a lot of ways, and I wish I had a dose of that confidence earlier in life.
No, it's so great, and I like that as like having that personal belief and going after your dreams, and that's so important. Okay, moving on to our next section. This is the rapid fire round, and this is where I'm going to ask you a bunch of fun questions, Larry, and it's the first response that comes to your mind. And again,
do I have the chance to win money?
We'll look at sending you the check.
Okay, very good.
My people will get in touch with your people. So, all right. So this is again the rapid fire round. Feel free to elaborate on these questions if you feel feel free to do so. But again, this is a rapid fire round. So, Larry, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So the first question for you is, what rock star has impressed you?
What rock star has impressed me? I have to go with Mick Jagger. Was he 80 and he's still dancing?
Yeah, Rolling Stones, Hall of Famer.
Talk about persistence. Or Keith Richards. He's still standing. I think that's impressive.
Yes, indeed. All right, the next question. Whose brain would you like to pick?
Whose brain would I like to pick? I'd go with Freud. I think his understanding of the human mind is. I don't know that I agree with everything that he wrote, but he'd be top of my list.
No, that's great. And then the next question is, what is one thing that you do every single day or week to maintain your sanity?
Oh, it's got to be yoga, Cal.
I agree with that. Yes, definitely. The next question is the 5 most important things in life according to you.
The 5 most? Mm-hmm. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the 5 most important things.
Well, health is obviously the first and foremost. I think being at peace with yourself is the second. Taking care of yourself, your health, eating well, and all that, which then allows you to take care of other people and your immediate family, and then number 5, taking care of the world at large.
That's really great. Like that. The next question is, do you believe in magic?
I believe in magic, not the kind that a magician would perform, but I certainly believe in magic moments, whether they be in the world of business or on the football field or whatever it might be. But I think those are powered by hard work and perseverance. But we all know them when we see them.
Yes, I like that. Absolutely. Like the single block that LeBron James did when the Cleveland Cavaliers won the championships. No, that is indeed, absolutely. But I think the Browns are overdue for a magic moment for sure. All right, so the next question is, if God exists, can she be trusted?
Yeah, if not her, who else?
If you could ask God one question, what would that be?
Why are we here?
I like that. And then the final question within the rapid fire round, and this is, if you could have any message of your choice on a billboard, what would that be?
Love one another.
I like that. Love one another. And that wraps up our rapid fire round, and then we are moving on to a wrap-up section here, and I've just got 3 final questions for you, Larry. And the first one is, What is your current personal or business passion project that you're working on, and what are you looking forward to in the next 6 months to a year?
Well, I think we're still wrapping up the work with the opioid task force, and we've got most of the materials created. A lot of it's put in the market already. We've got one more video that we're wrapping up, and now that we have all that content, we're really hoping to get the proliferation that we were hoping for both locally here in Northeast Ohio, but the campaign is being made available to anyone that wants to use it nationwide. So we're really in the phase of publicizing the campaign that we've created, and hopefully we can touch people not just here but across the country.
No, that is great. And then we'll include all that information in our show notes as well so that people can find out more about it. And the next question is 3 things you are grateful for in life.
I would say having my mom still around, despite losing my father so early on. My mom's in her mid-80s and doing great, and it's certainly a blessing to have her around. Secondly, having the family that I have today with my lovely wife and 2 children is just everything is as good as it could be. And last, probably our new home. We built a home about a year ago, and something I always wanted to do. So we're enjoying that now.
Oh, great. Like that. And congratulations on the new home as well.
Thank you.
And so I want to acknowledge you, Larry, and that is for a couple of things. One is what you're doing with the gift that you've been given, the expertise in your branding and advertising field to solve a problem that we as a society faces with drug overdose and drug addiction, and really, and this is a great example of how you can give back to the community and give back to society. And that's such a great thing that you're doing. And secondly, just being a role model for some of the younger generation and people in our community to see that, it's okay to, really have big dreams and going after it and then persevering regardless of what challenges that we may encounter. And you've really been a role model for all of us in that regard. So again, thank you for doing what you're doing, and I really wish you all the best.
Thanks, Cal. It's been great to catch up with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one final question, and this is how we wrap up all our interviews, and that is, why do you think people should listen to the Wisdom of Friends?
Because of you, Cal. In all seriousness, I think the idea as you explained it to me is a smart one. All of those brilliant ideas that we share often with each other and don't capture, or don't capture or limit them to a small group. Why not share?
Thank you for that, and I appreciate it. Again, really valued our time together and our conversation. And again, thank you for taking the time to be on the program. And for those of us who are listening, with that, we'll wrap it up. And if you like what you heard, please share. Don't be shy.
Thanks for listening to the Wisdom of Friends show with Cal Arras. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, theglobalcontribution.com. To your friends and colleagues, be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous episodes. This has been a 7 Symphonies production. Join us next time for another edition of the Wisdom of Friends.